started. We'll go
Okay.
start. We'll get started. This is hard. I don't know if anyone read it, had a chance.
I
to
did.
see it. Oh my
I've
God.
read it.
I
It's hard to
also-
understand.
Hey,
Hi,
Corinne.
babe.
I almost swore today.
So you were very
Yay.
aggressive today. Harry said was very impressed.
Things. When are you coming?
Whenever I can get off, I worked until just before I got on.
Okay.
Did
Bye.
you-
I'm gonna make cookies now.
Okay, love you.
Bye, Corinne.
Love you.
Okay.
So Dara, I even Googled it because I was like, what? So
I
go ahead.
couldn't wait. I want to hear how you explain it, Dara.
Oh, I don't feel, I looked at this for like the last 2 weeks and said, I don't, this is really hard. We'll do what we can. It probably doesn't make any sense, but we're gonna start with the same old one we always do, which is, when I find it, the timeline. There it is. You guys see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So we get started here. So this is what I've been doing, and I struggle with this, but in this chapter, what are we at? Chapter 7. We are back here at 553, okay, BC. This is back before the Medes and the Persians of last chapter, Darius and so forth took over. It's before that. It's the first year of Belshazzar's reign. Okay, so we find that in 553, we find that Daniel's first encounter or first dream, let's say, with Nebuchadnezzar would be back somewhere in this vicinity. You see, I turn the thing. So it's, if you look from 553 and possibly Daniel 2, when he had that statue dream, was almost 50 years before. So 50 years.
So how old was he? Like 60 something?
Well,
70 something?
in the last passage we found last time in Daniel 6, he was in his early 80s ish. So
How
let's
long
say-
did they live back then?
I don't know. He seems to be alive during Darius's reign and pretty sharp. So I don't know. I don't think it's like what you're thinking is like with Methuselah and so forth. I don't think.
No, it wasn't. I know it decreased by then.
So we look here, we see, if we get back here to 553, where we're going to talk about today, and we find out that he becomes, Belshazzar becomes the king somewhere around this time period, 555, 553, and he shares it with his father. Remember that? His father's off in a distant land, working on another one of his projects, and he leaves his son Belshazzar to kind of run the kingdom from Babylon. And so that's kind of where we are. So we'll try and read this. We'll go as far as we can, ask a lot of questions, and I probably don't have a whole lot of answers, but we'll try and we'll start. So if somebody wants to read 1 through 3.
I'll read it. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream, and visions passed through his mind as he was lying in bed. He wrote down the substance of his dream. Daniel said, "In my vision at night, I looked, and there before me were the 4 winds of heaven churning up the great sea. 4 great beasts, each different from the others, came up out of the sea."
So this is Daniel's first recorded dream. Now, he's had visions before. I think the previous dreams we'd seen, I mentioned chapter 2 and was it chapter 3 and 4? I don't remember exactly, but were Nebuchadnezzar's dreams. So this is Daniel's first dream. Daniel has a recorded vision back in chapter 2. Anybody remember what that was?
The statue?
Yeah, God gave him the understanding of Nebuchadnezzar's dream. So that was what I believe to be the first recorded vision that he had of the statue with the iron head and the chest of silver and the belly of bronze, the legs of iron, and the feet of iron and clay. So that would have been like 50 years prior to this. The assumption being that Daniel's been getting dreams for a long time here, and visions. Wonder who he tells. Because it says he saw a dream, he spake and he said, no, I'm sorry, it says he wrote the dream down and told the sum of the matters in verse 1. I wonder who he tells.
In verse 1, he wrote. the
I know
sum
who he told,
And told the sum of the
his
matter.
3 sisters.
There's three-
Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar. No, just kidding.
And here's another thing. In Daniel 1, what's he write down?
The sum of his dream, what the substance of his dream.
What does he say in verse 2?
I saw in my vision by night.
So one, he writes the dream down, but then he speaks the vision.
Yeah,
Same thing.
I don't
Yeah.
know. It says he has a dream in one and visions pass through his mind.
So the two different words, I'm not saying there's any significance. I just thought it odd that he writes the dream down, but speaks to the night vision. So maybe some of this is the vision and some is the dream. I'm not really sure. 4 winds of heaven break forth over the great sea. I think the great sea would give the idea of like breaking forth is considered strife or violently blowing the winds across the great sea. And 4 beasts come up and they're different or differing from one another or diverse. Now, what might the great sea represent if 4 kings come up from it?
Humanity?
Probably, yeah. That's what I would think. Now, we're not going to get into
Yeah.
interpretation yet, but in verse 17, Daniel 7:17, it does tell us what the sea is. Somebody
Yeah,
want to do
it
that?
does. The 4 great beasts are 4 kings that will rise from the earth.
Oh, so the earth?
Well, I think,
Humanity.
yeah,
People.
Beasts, which
Think it-
are 4 the arise out of the earth. Both King James and the other one says the earth.
Mhm.
yeah. So my guess would be, yes, it's a metaphor for humanity.
Yeah.
The peoples of the earth. 4 through 7.
I'll read. While it's quiet. The first was a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being, and the mind of a human was given to it. And there before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. It raised up on one of its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, get up and eat your fill of flesh. After that, I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard. And on its back, it had 4 wings like those of a bird. This beast had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. After that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns.
Okay. Let me share another screen here. In essence, the picture that we have here.
Oh, thank you.
So we have first a lion. He's got eagle's wings. His wings are plucked over, I'm guessing, over the course of time. He's lifted up from the earth. He's made to stand upon 2 feet as a man, and a man's heart has been given to him. Now, the one thing about these dreams, I think the people, and you guys have probably read what you think they mean, and they very well may mean that, but I think they think these are successive, not necessarily at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
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 So we have the bear with 3 ribs in his mouth here. So he's raised up. And he's raised up on one side, whatever that means.
I know. I thought that was weird.
3 ribs in his mouth between its teeth. And the voice says, arise and devour much flesh. The third one would be this leopard. 4 wings of a bird. It's given on its back. It has 4 heads. Its dominion or rule was given to it. I think that's the only thing that's mentioned. And then the 4th one, let me just find the last one. You mentioned the 4th one already, didn't you? Did we mention?
fourth? Yes, they did mention the 4th one. The 4th one was the terrifying and frightening beast.
Okay. This would be only thing I could think it would have been similar to. So it's exceedingly fearful, terrible, strong, dreadfully strong, great iron teeth, devours and breaks in pieces, seemingly crushing. Different from the other 3, which is probably a clue. And it has these 10 horns. Of course, it has the little horn that's going to pop up here. But it has to start with seemingly 10 horns that are first on it. And then, and then they're morphed. So I'm going to stop the share and then we'll just read the next verse. Verse 8.
While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was a little one which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being and a mouth that spoke boastfully.
Hey, Dad, can you let Meg in?
Yeah, I just saw that. Okay, there she is. Hi, Meg.
Hi, Maxie.
Hey, guys, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. No worries.
Let's go back to this share again here. Meg, we were on verse 8 in chapter 7, and we're trying to make heads or tails of what on earth this is talking about here. So we've read up to and including was that verse 8, G?
Yes.
Okay, so we've described the 4 beasts. And then we just read the passage in verse 8 that talks about the horns. And we're trying to figure out what, first, we're not really talking about what they are, but maybe just what they're supposed to, look like in this vision or the dream that he's having right now. So in verse 8, it says Daniel considered the horns. So here he's thinking about these horns, and if he's thinking about them, the suggestion seems to be, if he has time in a dream, and if this dream starts with the first beast and moving on to the last beast, the 4th one, and then moving on to the horns, the thought is a period of time may have gone by after he first sees the 4th one, and suddenly, as he's considering what the horns mean, he sees this little one begin to pop up or spring up. And as it appears, before which it's just 3 of the first 10 horns are plucked up by the roots. So the assumption is that somehow in the midst of these 10 horns, one began to grow up, as either 3 were plucked up by the roots, or maybe the gradual growth of the little horn crowded the other 3 out or brought them up. It's hard to know exactly what he's trying to say.
I thought it said it did pluck, somebody did pluck them out, or is that another verse?
No, that's the one. They're plucked out. But is that mean
By
they're
the,
harshly?
the root.
Yeah,
it
harshly,
says by the roots, Dar. They were plucked out by the roots.
right. So any trace of them is for whatever reason gone, as the little horn seems to take its place.
Correct.
Right. The point that I was trying to make is that, is this a harsh thing, or is this little horn kind of put to death the other three, which become ultimately die, and as he gets bigger, there's no trace of them left because he crowds them out. I don't know. I think and having trying to read some of these commentaries, and it's like, oh my gosh, like this is so shrouded in mystery that people were just throwing ideas. Does that mean
Yeah,
it's
it's just not clear.
right?
They think the little horn is the Antichrist.
Right, it does suggest that. So the little horn has the eyes of a man and the mouth speaking great things.
Boastfully.
Now,
Yeah.
why man? Any ideas? Why did they make mention a eyes of man and the mouth of a man?
That he's on earth and I don't know, as a ruler where the others are not one specific person calling the shots. I don't know.
Could be.
Like to distinguish, it's not like well, sorry, I came in late, but like to
No, no.
distinguish, it's not like a God thing. It's man.
It's a man-made thing. It's all
Yeah.
fleshly. It could be that there's some distinctive intelligence that it seems to be showing. It makes mention of the mouth speaking great things, as in like great power, domineering, possibly boasting, possibly prideful and arrogant. But if you look the word up, it just seems to suggest he's speaking great things, not necessarily pridefully, but it could mean that too. So he basically displaces the other three, and now there's what, 8 horns, but the little one with the man's mouth and the eyes is now he seems to be prominent. Let me go back to my notes here. So we are at a point where the beast described in 7:7 before the little horn appears is already dreadful, terrible, mighty, and exceedingly strong. And now he's speaking as if he's exceedingly strong, displaying possibly human intelligence via his eyes. He's displaced a portion of the original horns, and he's speaking very boastfully. Now, what is a horn? What would a horn represent to you guys? Just wondering.
To me, it represents power. Someone powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What were the horns on the altar? What did they represent?
which altar?
They represented a sanctuary. If you held on to the horns, they couldn't kill you.
Huh.
Okay. I would imagine.
Like on the Ark of the Covenant?
Yeah,
Yeah, like in the inner sanctuary, right?
in the temple.
The temple.
I would imagine here it does represent strength or power or something along those lines.
Mm.
So somebody read 9 and 10.
Mag, you're up.
All right. 7, 9, and 10?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. As I looked, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was as white as snow. The hair of his head was white like wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and its wheels were all ablaze. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands attended him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated and the books were open.
We go from talking about these four beasts that he's seeming to see on earth to suddenly he's seeing this vision of now heaven. It's just, it says in verse 9 that the thrones are set or placed, but the word is also the word used for cast down. So again, this gets to a point where some of the commentators are, well, you know, we think it's cast down, and some say, no, they're set. So we're going to go and we're going to look at some instances of some of what's being referred to in these two verses. Let's start in Revelation 4:2-4, and we'll read a little bit about thrones being set up. Revelation 4:2-4.
Okay. At once I was in the spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it. And the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and ruby. A rainbow that shone like an emerald encircled the throne. Surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and seated on them were 24 elders. They were dressed in white and had crowns of gold on their head.
So here we see a throne, and then there's more thrones in verse 4 where I guess the elders sit. So here they're not, nothing's cast down, they're actually seemingly there. But it's possible it's referring to earthly kingdoms that are being brought to an end, and all enemies and powers that opposed God and Jesus are being destroyed. That's
What did you say the word for cast down? Where was that?
which verse was it?
Where there's the debate over the word is cast down. Is that thrones?
Set.
Set,
Set, right. Thrones were either set or cast down.
correct.
Okay.
And the word cast down, like it's funny, in the King James it's cast down, in the ESV it's placed, in the ASV it's placed. So I'm not really sure. It's throw or to set, the cast. But anyway, in Revelation 20, verse 11 and 12. Let's read that.
Don, you getting that?
You want me to read?
It's you're up.
It's my turn.
Mhm.
11 and 12.
Yeah.
Then I saw a great white throne and him who was seated on it. The earth and the heavens fled from his presence, and there was no place for them. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened. Another book was opened, which was the book of life. The dead were judged according to what they had done, as recorded in the books.
This would seem to be closer to what Daniel saw, because Daniel's vision, they had books, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And the books were open. Now, who we assume that ancient of days would be who?
God.
God, right?
Right.
Now, just going back through the verses in Daniel, and by the way, in Revelation 20, 11, and 12, there's only one throne in that instance. So I'm not sure if Daniel is referring to all the authorities being, you know, any authority besides God's authority being cast down, and then the books are open, or whether he's referring to, well, the elders were invited and we had thrones set up for them too. Then God opened the books. It's very confusing. So it may not even be an important point, but I'm just trying not to miss clues as we get to them. Back in Daniel 7 and, let me just go back there, 7 and 9, the garments were as white as snow. Whose attributes were those be?
They would be God's or Jesus, but Jesus comes later.
Well, the question is, I couldn't find anything that referred to God.
Like
As-
angels?
Angels have been referred to as being white, and their garments were like as white as snow. Or not their garments, something else was white. Like when the angel appeared to Mary when at Jesus's tomb, they referred to that as being white as snow. But in this passage, the only thing that I could find attributed to that was Jesus when he was transfigured. And it says his garments became white as light. So,
In this one, though, the person who's the elder or the ancient, as they call him, is his throne is like fire.
well, we're
Right.
gonna get to that, Dee.
Oh, we haven't gotten to that. I'm
Ad
sorry.
nauseum, you're gonna say, oh my gosh, I should have called, I should have not come in today, but
Called out sick.
yeah.
I'm sick. I can't come.
Yeah.
Why? This is so exciting.
So here we see that you could say, okay, the attributes of the white as snow could be, it seems to referring to the Ancient of Days or God, but in other places seems to be Jesus who is white as light, or even at times angels that have garments that are white as snow. The next thing it mentions, his head is pure wool. Whose attribute is that? God?
I mean, who are they describing?
Yeah, whose attribute has a head like pure wool?
Oh.
God.
You mean in other passages or in this passage? I'm sorry, am I not understanding?
Just in any
God.
passage, it would seem to represent God.
Debbie's just trying to.
What?
What's
Yeah,
that?
I was
answered like 5
I was
times.
going like wool. I'm like, oh, sheep have wool. I was going off on like a thing there.
Do you ever picture God having a head with
Yeah,
like an afro with white?
Like
long
mum-ums.
white hair.
Like mama.
Well, in Revelation 1:14, Jesus's head and his hair were white as wool, white as snow,
Really?
and the eyes were as a flame of fire. And I read this in a commentary that said, this is the only place in the entire Bible that it referenced God as having a human form.
Oh,
And I
but
was
aren't
like,
we made in the image of God?
in the image of us, I think it says.
No, I said, aren't we made in the image of God? Didn't he fashion us to look like him?
I think it says us in our image, he says in back. in-
Yeah, like there's more than one of him.
The
But he-
3 of them.
Right.
I
Okay.
guess so. But yeah, so it seems to be the hair with pure wool. It seems to refer to God, but the references in Revelation are towards Jesus instead.
Hmm.
Let's take a break because it's less than a minute, and then we'll be right back, and we'll pick up with his throne is like fiery flames.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.